Good morning, everybody. This is Martin John, and we are here to talk about the Tao Te Ching. I like to start a little early on Thursdays because I have a call that might just cut me shorter than an hour, and I like to be up here for at least an hour, or right around there somewhere. So thank you for joining me. This is Martin John, and we are here to talk about the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching is an ancient text written in the 6th century BC, and it helps us live a more reasonable life. It's full of enigmatic wisdom and ways that we could perceive things a little differently so as to not hold on to expectations and measurements and comparisons, but live our lives in a way that we can really allow people the freedoms that we want for ourselves. It's really difficult when we live in a world and we want other people to act and be a certain way. It's hard for us because don't they want the same thing? Don't they want us to act a certain way? How could we be wanting certain things, whether that's money or love or commitment or whatever? I mean, maybe we want to give those things. Maybe we want to embrace those things. But if other people aren't going to be embracing those things as well, or if other people want to embrace those things differently. I know my neighbor, she got a divorce recently because her husband didn't want to share the money he was making with her. Like, they were husband and wife, but he didn't want to share it because he was like, I want money. And she was like, I want to buy things. and I don't know the relationship, but I do know that was his reasoning was really just around like not wanting to share. And that's hard, like in our lives when we don't want to share and we don't want to, like, well, I want all of this for myself. I was like, I'm sure she wants things for herself as well. But we can't see that all the time. We can't always see the forest through the trees on that. We think about ourselves and we live our lives sometimes very selfishly. Now, sometimes we live our lives for other people to such a degree that it's damaging as well. And so there's always balance that we need to strike. There's always a balance somewhere in it all. You know, whether it's because we're being nice and we need to be, and we need to find ways of being forceful, find ways of telling people no. Or whether it's we're selfish and egotistical, we need to find ways of letting other people in, letting it be important that other people exist and they get what they want to. You know, there's always a range. I don't really believe in diagnoses as the end all to living your life, right? When diagnoses or blame or other things like that. Like, if you're different than other people, so be it. Yes, okay, there might be medication you can take so that you can feel more normal, quote unquote, whatever that means. Maybe there are things you can do so that other people won't judge you as harshly or won't, you know, that you can engage with people because maybe engaging with people is anxiety ridden. I understand that. Like, and there are things, we have a pharmaceutical industry that aids that. I have no problems with that. But diagnoses get hard because if you get diagnosed with something, then that becomes part of your identity. And in the Tao, we talk about like getting away from identity and allowing yourself to be who you are. Imagine if everything that you were, everything that you do, everything that you are is perfect. Imagine that it's perfect for you to be that. Then you wouldn't have ADHD. You'd be you. And if that was perfect, Like, I understand that the world is set up in a way that makes us work and lean in certain directions. And that's when I talk about living under the influence. That's what we're living under. We're living under the influence of a society that wants us to be, what I mentioned earlier, quote unquote, normal. Gabor Mate, his newest book, I believe, is called The Myth of Normal. There is no normal. You are as you are. Now, there is balance that needs to be struck with that as well. And you will know that. You will know the balance you need to strike. Many people you talk to in the world will tell you, well, this is just who I am. I am just nice. Okay, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that being who you are. But sometimes, even if you're the nicest person in the world, it's hard to be nice. And sometimes being nice hurts. And sometimes you don't like that you're being nice. You guys have heard me say that phrase before. You know, and when you don't like that you're being nice, maybe it's time to not be nice. Maybe not all the time, but the pendulum always swings. Good kids, you know, they're good children, good firstborn children, right? Following the rules, doing all that they're told to do. And then the pendulum swings at a certain time and rebellion slips in. And then they fly too far to the other side, maybe winding up in prison or hurting somebody or doing something that, you know, they regret doing. And then they learn their lesson and they go back to being nice. And if they don't keep swinging that pendulum, if they stop swinging that pendulum after they come back from being rebellious, they're going to double down on the lessons that they've learned around being a good kid and doing the right thing. And then rules are going to rule the roost, you know? And that's how we solidify our frames of reference in the world. We have these experiences, and then we try and balance, but then we get afraid of continuing to try to balance. Catherine, how are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm, trying to deal with my life on the terms I have.
Okay. Life on life's terms.
Yeah, life on life's terms.
Yeah. What?
I was
So,
listening to you talk about the older sibling, and I was like, that's what I did, but I never swung back from being rebellious. I still feel rebellious. Like, but now I feel like I'm rebellious against a capitalist system, not like just what my parents taught me. Like there's
well,
more of a system that I've noticed that I don't like how things are.
yeah. Well, I
How
think that
many people have lack, and
yeah.
other people have such enormous wealth.
Yeah. And I think that there's a lot to be said about, you pick things up. So like you're firstborn?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
I am.
Okay. So you did everything for quite some time and you collected all the rules, you collected all the ways to be, and you were, responsible, quote unquote, and you did all of your firstborn things. That's traditionally what a firstborn does. That could express itself in a myriad of ways. So I don't know if that's totally what you had. And then you rebel, and your rebellion I don't know how you rebelled or what you did and stuff.
Well, drinking was part of it.
Yeah. But see, like sometimes and I don't want to talk about the firstborn. Sometimes when a person who is attached to rules, and attached to understanding the world in a very, black and white sort of way, when they go to rebel, there's a number of things that can happen, of course, obviously, but usually what always will end up is that you then discover yourself through rules and judgments. So even though you're still rebelling against the specific rules that your parents may have established, your new life is still controlled very heavily, probably, off of rules, black and white, and structured, and a structured way of seeing the world.
Yeah, I'm holding on to that. I can't have what I want. I've been trying to work on
Right.
that with myself over, the last week or so. And yeah, there was something else. So we have employee assistance program at work. And because this move has been really tumultuous for me, things could have gone smoother. It hasn't been super rough, but this is my whole world turned upside down to me because I lived in the same place for so long.
Yeah.
And so I thought I should probably have some counseling, and the EAP stuff is free. So I was like, I probably need a few sessions to, work this out. And we talked about, I don't know if I mentioned this, I have, it's a rare enzyme deficiency. I lack phosphorylase B kinase enzymes enough to convert food to energy efficiently.
Mm.
So, how that works out for me is it started as I would play too hard when I was a kid, and then my chest would hurt. So it would hurt to breathe, right? And then all I could do is lay there and try not to breathe as much as possible, which involved me taking as deep a breath as I could and holding it as long as I could, and then exhaling as much as I could, and then waiting as long as I could to inhale, basically, is what I did. And of course,
I just want to point out that all of this is I would point out all of that is very energetic, and all of that has something to do with the energy that you're holding, and
it's literally about how my body makes energy. So yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Right. And so it's literally the idea that you can't convert food to energy. Right. This is, you can't, it's this almost this idea, you can't create energy. You can't create this. You can't create. You can't you living a life in which you feel stuck is probably very normal for you. You've probably felt stuck in one area or another in your life most of your life.
Yeah.
So I'm only getting that from what you said. I wrote the notes. I don't often write notes about people that I talk to, but that's an important thing. And then I start listening to how you dealt with that when you were a child. And I don't know if you were told to deal with it that way, or if you felt
no, that was just instinct for me when it first started.
And so there's something in that, your instinct to deal with it in that way, i.e. hold on.
Yeah.
And don't breathe, right? Hold on to your breath and then don't breathe for as long as you can. So that is going to create an idea in your mind that even though, let's call it wealth, whether it's wealth of oxygen or wealth of finance, wealth is all around you and accessible. You can only access so much of it.
Yeah. As part of that, they didn't really explain it to me well when I was diagnosed. And
no, nobody explains it.
Who
explains? No, nothing.
1 in 200,000 people are diagnosed with this. So
it doesn't matter.
There wasn't really a lot of info about treatment.
All that matters is that this is what I was talking about earlier. I don't care about your diagnosis.
Okay. I was just trying to get to it, the counselor said.
No, I understand. But see, they're trying to do that for a lot of reasons, right? because maybe they don't have an answer. They're trying to do that because, like all sorts of reasons.
Right.
But this is your life. When you were a child, you dealt with it in a very intuitive, beautiful way. And then, as you got older, you started to give up some of that and saying, a doctor needs to tell me what to do. Because that's what we do in our world. And so you then become the victim of there not being enough information. Once again,
I did my own research.
Right. But there's still not enough information, right? You still don't know. And so that then goes into the lack category that you believe the world is presenting you.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing, like, you're doing great. Like, I mean, you might not feel that way. Right. But because you're dealing with all of this stuff in your own way, you're going to find a way through it. Now, it's going to take a lot because you have lived your entire life under the influence of this diagnosis, under the influence of how it affects your body, under the, and then you had to move. And think about holding your breath and then not breathing for a long time, right? Like your last apartment was you just holding on to it. And now you have to breathe. And that's something that was difficult for you.
Yeah, it hurt.
Which is why... So, you held on to it for so long, even though it hurt to do and it was hard to do. You held and you held and you held, and then you let it go. And then you were without air and you held it for as long as you could until your body forced you to breathe.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, there are a lot of similarities between your moving and that.
Well, and I feel like I'm being forced to move at work because they're renovating the HVAC system, and I have to move all the stuff out of my cubicle and stuff by the end of the month. And we're going to be up in this new transition space. The universe is making me move.
So, basically you had to, if I were to be looking at this, I'd be very curious as to how, like when you had to hold your breath, you're holding your breath because you're holding it in your job, and you're holding your breath because you're holding it at your house, and you're holding your breath because you're holding it in, maybe relationships. And then all of a sudden, when you start to exhale, when you start to give up that breath, your house goes, your work goes, your relationships go, and everything goes because that is the pattern that you trained yourself to exist within. So and now that still doesn't deal with not converting energy, but how you dealt with not converting energy, because that is the frame of reference that you carry. Does that resonate?
Yeah. 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 I lost my thought though. When you said that, I was holding my breath for everything. Well, what the counselor reminded me, because I mentioned my enzyme deficiency, and how wore out I got moving. And the other thing is, if my chest wall muscles don't start hurting, which is what causes that pain, then my muscles will just give out at a certain point. Most people talk about they work out really hard or whatever and they're sore the next day, but that's not how it works for me. My muscles will just quit. They just get so weakened that they'll just stop working for me. And so most of my life, I adapted myself to not push myself hard enough to get to that point, because there was pain. So when I was moving, I I was like, I have to move this stuff. There's no option until like my muscles were at the point where I couldn't carry anything else, like
Yeah.
my microwave. And the counselor was like, you need to allow for that in your life. Are you listening to yourself? Not everybody has this deficiency and has this problem. Like you can't do what everybody else can do. You need to quit comparing yourself to them. And I was like, I never really gave myself any grace for this. Like
Right.
I have it and I don't want to deal with it. And so like I ignore it the best I can until I can't ignore it anymore.
Yeah, that's how you breathe. That's how you dealt with the problem when you were a kid.
Yes.
Like that's the same way. So you're dealing with this problem in the same way that you always dealt with everything. You're going to hold on as long as you can until you can't do it anymore.
Yep. And with that, I think I'm ready to pick a number.
Yeah, let's pick a number. And you might
Let's
have to
do
come back
random
up
this
if you have
time.
the time. What's that?
Let's do random this time.
Random?
Yeah.
Gotcha. 76. It's entitled Life is Flexible. It is true for all things that aligned with life, there is yielding, flexibility, and grace. It is also the case that aligned with death, all things are stiff, brittle, and inflexible. In all things we can witness plainly rigidity of any kind is a companion of death. Softness of any kind is a companion of life. Be soft and yielding. It overcomes rigidity.
I feel like that holding my breath was being rigid.
Yeah, no, absolutely rigid. Staying in your place when you wanted to move for a while. Rigid.
Mm-hmm.
Not being
Right.
able to transition to a transitional space at your job. That's rigid. You're like, no, it has to be the same. And that's that's all rigid. The rules that we talked about when we first got on the call. Rigidity.
Yeah. It's definitely aimed at me. I'll come back up. I'm not.
Yeah, come back
I'm
up
still trying to
and
process.
we'll go through it line by line, and then it'll be a little bit easier to understand. I haven't really done the whole going through it line by line recently. That's how I used to go through it, so that we can all understand what's going on in these texts. I now like to focus on what do you hear, but going through line by line is really great. And sometimes starting at the end and then going back to the beginning. So the last line is, be soft and yielding. It overcomes rigidity. Soft and yielding. When I think about
being able to breathe.
Right. Being able to breathe. When you hold your breath, like, it's interesting. In my mind, when you hold your breath, there's like brittleness. It's like you expand your lungs to the place, and you expand your chest to the place that it can't go anymore. And it's like it seems like it gets dried out somehow too, like it's just like you hold your breath and hold it and hold it and hold it. It just very much seems like a brittle stance, because like if you hold your breath and someone tells you a joke, you can't hold your breath anymore.
Yeah.
It just comes out. It's like there's this thing where it's real delicate. And especially when you hold it that long. Because it is forcing its way out, or it's forcing its way in.
Yeah.
There's no way to, because like the holes to your lungs are wide open. It's like you have to and if you were to pinch your nose closed, when you're holding your breath, like that will hold it in, but it only makes things almost more brittle. It's almost like a balloon, and it's bursting at the seams. So this starts with, it's true for all things that while aligned with life, there is yielding flexibility and grace. It is also the case that when aligned with death, all things are stiff, brittle, and inflexible. So that's where we start. And that is just saying this is true for all things. If you live your life stiff, brittle, and inflexible, you are aligned with death. If you
that sounds like I, live my life like I don't have this deficiency, like I just want to pretend like I don't.
That is inflexible.
Yeah.
Living your life as if you don't have what you have, that's inflexible.
Yeah.
Right? You have this. Like, it's great you have a diagnosis.
Sure.
But
yeah, label.
Right. But you are Catherine, right? Catherine is different from everybody else. Now, maybe everybody else is telling you, well, you should be able to move your house and burp, 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 burp. You should be able to do that. But if you were, I know you have this thing about capitalism, but we're gonna utilize it anyway. If you were a millionaire, you wouldn't be moving your own house. You'd hire people to do it.
Yeah. And I'd pay them a living wage.
Right. But that has nothing to do with your ability. But that has nothing to do with your ability to move it. You busted your hump to move it.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else would have moved by hiring somebody. They wouldn't have busted their hump, but you're trying to live your life in comparison to their ability to bust their hump.
Huh.
But they wouldn't have lifted a finger. And they probably still would have gotten more tired than you did. But see, you're comparing one aspect, your ability to bust your hump. Now that
I do have other stuff. Like, I'm pretty resilient.
But that in and of itself, like that is, you are resilient. You're sure. But so what? You're not resilient. You're Catherine.
That's right.
You're not tough. You're Catherine. And Catherine can be tough. And Catherine can be resilient. And Catherine can need a bath. And Catherine can cry. And Catherine can be tired. And you know what? Different days, you have the ability to do different things. It is true for all things that while aligned with life, there is yielding, flexibility, and grace. Yielding means just stop it already. Let it go. Flexibility means, well, today I do this, tomorrow I do that, and I'm just going to be able to move. I don't have to be resilient every day. I don't have to be tough every day. I don't have to be that, because there's a time for all things. To everything turn, turn, turn.
I love that song.
That song is all about, that song
really
is about Tao. It is, what's that?
Well, I thought it was about a Bible verse, but I guess Tao fits too.
Yeah.
That's some Bible verses based on.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. It is. Because there is a time for everything. And so if you think that there's only time for productivity, there's only time for resilience, there's only time for busting your hump, well, then you're stiff, brittle, and inflexible.
Yeah, I learned that. That's a influence I'm still under from especially my mom. Always had to be productive. I couldn't even watch a whole football game with my dad. That was just too much wasted time.
Right. And that's your mom, judging you guys because she judges herself in that same way. And then she is probably angry that both of you were watching it and So she has power over you, not him. So she's going to pull you away.
Right. Well, I don't know. She had a lot of power over him too.
Oh, okay. Well, either way, maybe she pulled him away too. I don't know. But then the next line is, in all things we can witness plainly. So it just established it's true for all things that while aligned with life, things are yielding, flexible, and grace. Aligned with death, things are stiff, rigid, and inflexible. Then it says, in all things we can witness plainly. Rigidity of any kind is a companion of death. And softness of any kind is a companion of life. Now, you're going to be a companion of both life and death in your life. Absolutely. However, if you say, look, I'm going to be soft today and I'm going to stay in bed, is that soft?
Sounds more like rigid.
Right. Rigidity of any kind. Softness would be like, oh, I'm tired. I'm going to stay here for a moment. And then when you get up, and you do what you do.
That,
just like when you were a
inspired
kid.
action. When I'm inspired to take action.
Right. Now, you allow yourself to move your body around, just like you figured out how to breathe when you were a kid, so you can relieve yourself of pain, relieve yourself of the diagnosis that you had. But at that point, you figured out that was a solution. Holding on until you can't hold on anymore. And then letting it go, but not bringing in air and holding that for as long as you can. So you may right now be in a state of holding your breath out, holding your lungs empty.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything is out. And you may be going through a state in which you perceive the world to be empty. And nothing so the temporary space is empty, your new apartment is empty. I don't know what else you're dealing with in your life. There's like...
That's enough.
What's that?
That's enough.
That's enough. It's absolutely enough. But like, my guess is that you'll be experiencing this empty lung stage now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's symbolic, right? We look at symbols, we look at how things relate to the way that you process and the way that you experience things. But if that was a solution for you when you were a kid, like the holding of your breath, so that you can create energy. Now, trust me, moving your apartment and not liking your apartment is going to create energy. It's going to create energy in certain areas that so that you can be happy or content, whether that's in your apartment or moving your apartment or whatever. And going into a temporary space at work might create energy because you're being forced to do something. I mean, it created enough energy for you to go see your, the counselor at work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's starting the transition. And then eventually you'll be forced by your body, by the universe, by the things around you to take that breath in, to fill your lungs again. And I can already feel how relieved your body is when it gets that breath.
Yeah.
But the thing is you don't have to, right? Like the thing is understanding. My guess is also that you've dealt with this before. Losing everything and then having to rebuild.
Yes.
And this cycle will continue as long as you still live under the influence of those experiences that you had as a kid, and you know, becoming aware of where they're showing up, how they're showing up, and doing all that. That's the work. That's the work that we have to do in our lives, so that we don't want other things to change, right? Like the whole idea. And you know, when you think about, you know, the billionaires and all that stuff, like they're just holding their breath. They're holding their money, just like you did. And so you focused on that. And that's, you know, like, and there's probably in your mind this wanting them to lose it all, and wanting it to just all go out and fill the coffers of the world so that everybody has enough.
Yeah.
Right. So that is you're holding, like, you see it that way because this is how you see the world. You see the world in this place of holding your breath and then letting it all out. And it's like, okay, it's scary to not have any air in our lungs. But it's relieving in my life, right? But there's work that needs to be done there, just so you can understand yourself and where you're coming from. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this helps a lot. Martin John, thanks. Of course, it was always the right verse. So, I'm gonna go and finish getting ready for work. And
I'll send you this text, this number 76.
Okay.
Well, you're doing great. It's okay.
Martin John.
Yeah. Flexibility.
Yeah. I'm gonna remember that today.
Yeah. Softness of any kind. Try and just be soft. All right. Thanks for coming up. There's so many frames of reference that we can pick up. You pick up a frame of reference in your world, and then you associate it with everything that's around you. You get yourself into a pickle. You know, because then, like, you're perceiving the world from one specific place. You're perceiving the world from, you know, so when we think about, you know, the commercialization of the commerce of the world, Catherine has a certain idea, and she has ways that she can resolve that, right? Hold your breath and then let it out, and then hold your emptiness, right? And I think that's I remember when I was a kid, we figure out how to fix things. We figure out how to deal with our bodies. Before I got glasses, I would make a pinhole. I would put my hand in a fist so I can look through my fist from my thumb and index finger, and then, right, so into the fist through to the pinky. I would poke my hand like it was a monocle or something, right? It was a what are they called? Like telescope, right? So I'd look through it like it was a telescope. And when I would cinch my hand down, and I'd be able to see long distances by just putting that, like, my hand over my eye and looking across the room. I was able, and I still can do that. Like, I can't see my computer screen, but then if I do that little telescope thing with my hand and look through it, I can read. I can only see one word at a time or two words at a time, but I can see. It's amazing how we can figure out how to overcome deficiencies in our bodies. You know, now it's like I just wear glasses. You know, the world has a solution for me, but my solution was different, and it was for me. JK,
I did that too, though.
You did that too.
I did. I used to do that, and it's funny because I didn't get glasses until it was later. I want to say, I don't know, somewhere between second and fourth grade. And I remember going to the eye doctor.
That's later for you? Like, I was like...
Well, it was because I couldn't see for a long time. And I think it was close. I remember it must have been fourth grade because I remember the teacher in my class. And I remember they put me in the very back, and I remember not being able to see very well. And it took me forever. This woman used to write notes on this blackboard, like from the beginning to the end. And we had to write them all down in our notebook. And I couldn't, it took me so long, and I got in trouble because it took me too long. And I wasn't, when I handed in my notebook, only a part of it was there, and they discovered I needed glasses. But I used to sit there with my telescope just like you did.
Yeah.
And I used to try, but that, I still couldn't see very well. And when I went to the eye doctor, finally, I remember him saying, he's like, wow, he goes, you actually got a lot of the letters right. He said, you are able to interpret blur very well. And I was like, I am? And I'm thinking, and it was a funny comment. No, I think about it now, but I don't know. When you were talking about the telescope, I did the telescope thing too. I thought it was funny because
Yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah.
anybody else who
But
did that.
nobody taught us that,
No.
and that's what's amazing about children. And they didn't say, I need glasses. They didn't say, I need you to solve this problem for me. They solve it themselves.
Yep.
And people would ask me, what are you doing? I was like, oh, I can see better this way. And they didn't even believe me.
I know.
Like, what are
Oh.
you doing? And it doesn't matter. Like, whatever you need to do to fix your stuff, just like Catherine did her breathing thing. Nobody told her to do that.
Well, yeah, and it goes back to even like your pacifiers and the way I view them, using them as judgments before, I view them as just that. I'm just putting my telescope up for right now, but
Right.
being aware of that, and the same thing, like we all have crap. I mean, I have a lot of diagnoses too. And I think about when you're talking about some of that stuff with my kid, she has a diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Then they had a different diagnosis for her. And then, and it's all the same shit, And it really is the process. And it's funny because we had to come to this conclusion because I had to dig in my head. That was my way of pacifying the reality of all of a sudden my kid can't walk,
Right.
and I needed to know. So I needed to fix it.
Yeah.
And coming all back around to the fact that I couldn't, that the process for treatment is going to be the same regardless of what it's called, and just letting go. And I think that was the hardest part for me, especially being someone who relates to that rigidity and that, I was a certain way. I had to be stoic. I had to be strong. That was the life I lived. I adapted because I had to, or I felt I did, right? I did have a choice in that matter. But I chose that path, and that path was it had to be strong and stable in my mind. And it wasn't until I let go of some of that. And, that was when, and it was scary as shit because I always envisioned, I had faith. I believed, I was walking this very tight rope across two buildings, and I knew there was a net at the bottom, but that shit was so close to the ground that I knew my skull was going to be cracked. I knew I wasn't going to die, but there was going to be a lot of pain involved in this. So I was so afraid to let go. And it's wonderful when you do let go, little bits at a time, though. I don't think I was ready to just let go and let my skull be cracked open. In my mind, these are my images. And it's really interesting because the more I let go, that rope gets lower and lower to the ground to the point where it becomes irrelevant. And I don't even care because I know it doesn't matter. But it takes a lot of time to get through that. And, it's funny coming back into the space with my daughter and this diagnosis thing and having to go back to rehab and all this stuff that's coming back again and being able to look at it so differently and not so rigid. So that's, I don't know, it's a gift for me, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of letting go, and it's scary.
No, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know why I went off.
No,
on that
and I think
tangent,
that, I think that, I think that's, it's interesting when you talk about it and versus Catherine, and this is how we can learn about subjective experience, right? Like your idea of letting go and holding on versus her idea of letting go and holding on because of how she dealt with things when she was a kid with her breathing, and how maybe you dealt with letting go, where it's just like, you're envisioning like your skull being cracked, it's a tightrope and this and that, so like all of those are significant because they're all talking about the same thing. You and Catherine are talking about the same thing, although there's a different subjective experience, and that subjective experience is going to bring about different imagery, but that's also going to mean the experience of it and how it presents itself in your life is going to change as well. It's going to be very different between you and Catherine, even though you're both talking about like the softness of being able to let go of something, the softness of being able to be flexible and yielding. So let's go ahead and pick a number.
Let's do 56.
Learn to be silent. Learning to be silent, like, okay, there is the actual silence, not talking or not thinking, right? Not letting your mind kind of go. But it's really kind of about like, can you be subtle? I was talking to someone, I was working at the university yesterday. I was talking to this security guard, and the security guard is enamored with me. Like he's
We have a buddy.
He's like, you'd be someone that's cool to go. You could probably hang out with anybody. And I was like, well, yeah, it's kind of true. But he's, he was talking. He was like, I bet you really like the one-on-one. You don't like the digital stuff and all that. And I had to tell him, I was like, there's no difference between the two.
Yeah.
When you're aligned with the silent, when you're aligned with silence, when you're aligned with subtle, you can experience just as much connection with somebody when you're in front of them as when you have them on Zoom or on Wisdom or Noon Vibe, right?
Or not even with them.
Right. Not even with them. I can have a connection, and I can have a client that I've never meet or speak to. That could happen. So what it says here, and when it says learn to be silent, it's it is about being still within your experience.
Yeah,
Catherine has her experience, you have yours, and the silence is the expectations as well.
And that was something with this one is interesting, always interesting, because the first time I've picked this one several times, I'm sure, but I remember one of the first times I picked it, it was shut up in my head, right? Just zip it, like be quiet, literally in my head, and I don't know what else I took, but that's what I remember. And now when I think about this one, I understand what you're saying with the subtle, because we also say action speaks louder than words and all these other things, and be still, not just silent verbally but physically, and really looking at your intuition and what you're being inspired to do, as opposed to just doing to do. When I was trying to figure out what was wrong with my daughter, I was doing to do because I needed to keep my hands busy, because my mind was so lost. And now I can see the difference, and I do. And I decisions are not as hard. I think I shared this with you about, there was a time in my life I couldn't make a decision, and it was everything. Whether I wanted milk, or I don't drink milk, but whatever, milk or water was hard for me because I thought it was going to make a difference. If I could ruin one relationship with one interaction, and if you can, well, that relationship was supposed to be ruined anyway. And I don't have that pinging back and forth as much. And when I am stuck for a decision, when I'm trying to figure that out, I stay and, I take a minute and I breathe and I try to check in with myself to see where do I want to go? Where am I being drawn to and called, as opposed to spending all this energy figuring out, because I do really believe that it's not going to matter anyway. I'm going to end up where I need to be regardless. So the choice becomes a lot easier for me. But that idea of being silent now it's a whole different world as opposed to just being quiet. So I don't know.
Yeah, let me
What you were
read this
saying
and
makes
then we'll
sense to me.
see. We'll read this and then we'll see how it all relates. But those who know aren't drawn to speak. Those who don't know are compelled to. Can you close your senses and your mouth? Can you be guided by the empty void? From there, meditate in silence. Blunt your sarcasm and wit. Simplify your struggles. Shade your brilliance. Be at one with the dust. This is primal existence. Be like the master. She is uninspired to acquire fame, yet honors are bestowed upon her. She is possessed by no one, and no one possesses her, yet is always loved by many. She is immune to both attraction and repulsion, receptive to both profit and loss. She is noble and held in high esteem by all beings. In short, that's really talking about like accepting things as they are.
Mm-hmm.
Don't presuppose your situation. Don't presuppose what people are thinking. Don't presuppose the solution. I know a lot of people, I think I was talking to someone the other day and they were talking about the next time I do this, I'm going to do this. The next time this happens, I'm going to. And it's like, whoa. You don't know what's going to happen next time.
Yep. And
So,
not presupposing who you are either.
Right.
I did a lot of that.
Right. So once you do that, once you're in that, and that's what this is talking about when it says, from there, meditate in silence, blunt your sarcasm and wit, simplify your struggles, shade your brilliance. See, I love this line, shade your brilliance, because it presupposes your brilliance.
Yeah.
And it's like, you are brilliant, but you don't, but the more you point to your brilliance, the more you
Are not.
right. The more you get in your own way. Be at one with the dust. This is primal existence. Anytime I dust in my house, and I live near an expressway, so there's a lot of dust. And there were drop ceilings, a lot of dust. Anytime I dust, I think about this. It's like, this is what everything is.
Mm-hmm.
This dust. This is like, who knows where this dust has been, and what is
and from
in
when,
this dust.
and
yeah. Who knows where it's been? And here I am, and to be still and recognize the brilliance of that dust and throw it away. Because it's all stupid.
And see it, but you're consuming it too, because you're breathing it in, and it's all part of you. It's all around you. I don't know. It's cool. Cool thought.
It is. Yeah. All right. I'll send that over to you. Love you. You have a wonderful day.
Bye. You too.
Bye-bye. We're going to bring my buddy, Truly Julie. What's up? TJ.
Cool.
Hey, Julie.
The art of sloughing.
What's that?
Art of sloughing. It's when, the outer layer of your skin drops off and creates that dust. So, as you're dusting around, I often think to myself, well, there's another bit of me.
There's a little bit of me in there.
It's so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
We've had an interesting time here.
What happened?
Well, I've now got a sticker on the boiler of the house. Now, this is what happened, I will tell you. I didn't want to create an idea of what this sit was going to be like. And I remember talking to you about it. Each one is just as it is. There's no me trying to say one thing or another about it, or make assumptions or have demands of it.
Right.
But I did, you see. I did. I made
well, yeah. Simple, I mean, yeah, of course.
Yeah, 2 simple demands. One was to be warm, and the other was to be dry. That's it.
Uh-oh.
The rest I could provide. Anyway, the plumber came because they were having problems with the boiler and the pressure in the boiler. And we were kind of told to, keep applying pressure because it was losing it. Now, I know from somewhere in the back of my brain that pressure being lost means that there's an escape route somewhere for that pressure. So I'm aware of that, and I'm thinking, Anyway, the plumber had been arranged before we got here, so that was good. And we were expecting the plumber to come. He came yesterday, and he stuck a sticker on the boiler and said that he'd capped it off because it was dangerous.
Uh-oh.
So when I thought about that, I had a little bit of a chuckle to myself. He is coming back. It's all in hand. It's not a problem because life's easy, as you know.
I know, yeah.
But I did think to myself, oh, yeah, that demand you made of warmth.
Yeah.
Good luck with that, love.
That's right.
But it made me chuckle. It made me laugh a lot. There's lots of finding keys because the plumber needed to look at the flue because with his knowledge and his observations, he thought about it being a flue issue, and the flue was going into the garage. We couldn't get into the garage. The garage was locked. Didn't know where the key was. We had to invite everyone round to find the keys. Eventually, we found them at 11 something last night. But we'd have had to have moved a car out of the garage that is squeezed in because the garage is small, the car is big, it's an automatic, and I haven't driven an automatic vehicle for 15 years, so that would be interesting.
You do less.
Yeah. It's a tight squeeze, and it's the garage faces an old cobbled stone wall. And if I don't really know how to stop the car once it's in motion, there could be anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot of story.
I went to bed.
Yeah.
I went to bed. Well, it'll be what it'll be.
Mm-hmm.
This morning I woke up to another text. So-and-so, my friend, is coming round to remove the vehicle and take it somewhere else for you. Oh, look at that.
Life is easy. I could have
spent the whole time worrying about it and trying to do a bit of research on how to drive automatics. And
well, you could always call me. I'm an American. We don't. I've driven stick for a long, long time. Love manual, but since I got my diagnosis of MS, I now have to drive automatic because I don't know if my my left side will stop working.
Right, yeah. So you're encouraging a different route to that's fine. But yeah, I used to drive automatic vehicles, delivery trucks is what I used to drive. So I was used to only using wing mirrors and getting into tight spaces. And I will tell you, there have been some incidents. But can you imagine driving the vehicle of the people who are our hosts and doing anything to it? I had to climb up. This is part of the deal. Climb up the shelving unit. This is how tight it was in the garage. Roll across the bonnet, making sure I don't put any weight middle of the bonnet because I was al dente, and then climb down the other side to get into the driver's side. So it was exciting. I'm sitting with that last one. I was thinking, okay. Well,
what kind of car is
it? It's a Ford, so it's fine. But it is big. It is a big Ford. But I'm just thinking, well, it is what it is. And if I have to do that, I have to do that. That's fine. If that's my experience to have, that's what I'll do.
Yeah. And
This morning, Alan turns up and everything's fine.
Yeah.
Alan does it. I don't have to do anything. Life's easy.
Did you make him a cup of tea?
I did offer him one, but he said, "You're all right, thanks."
And what about your previous sit's brother?
Oh, I've got to rearrange that because now the plumber who couldn't get into the garage yesterday is coming back Friday, so I'm going to have to send him a message to say, emergency plumber coming out on Friday, can we rearrange? And he'll be fine. He'll be fine. Either he will or he won't. Either it's meant to be or it's not. And this is it. Yeah. I'm not going to be, I'm just going to let him know what's going on so that he doesn't prepare lunch and then we don't turn up.
Absolutely. Then you're being mean.
Yeah, I'm right. If I know this is going on, I'm withholding information that could be very helpful and a lot kinder on someone else's experience. So there you go. But yeah, all exciting stuff. So I just want to share that with you.
Yeah.
The fun of it, because even though all of these things were requested, I didn't allow myself to be rocked inside my piece.
It's nice to chuckle at yourself and go, my silly requests.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? Yeah. It is fun. So yeah, I thought about that, and then I chose number 63.
63. Problems are no problem. Did you do that on purpose?
Yeah, I've just come across it. I've just opened it on my book, and it's number 63.
Problems are no problem. Yeah. Be still and you will act without doing. Be still and your work will happen regularly. Be still and your senses will engage the subtle. Yeah. Similarly, engage a stranger as the multitude. See the majesty of mountains in a grain of sand. The master knows greatness cannot be grasped. Remaining still, she allows greatness to flow through her. With no desire to achieve it, her stillness guides her. Making subtle movements, the difficult seems easy. She knows that life is not without its problems, and so problems turn out to be no problem at all. So great. And I think about this, and I think about you rolling over the Ford. Right? I think about your work will happen regularly. It's like you got work ahead of you. Like, yes, you're going to be warm, but not tonight.
That's right.
And it's like, and your work will present itself when you need to do it. And then you were working it out, and then the guy came to move the truck. I forget his name, but
Alan
came to move the truck for you. And what's your work then? Let me offer you a cup of tea. He says no, but that's fine. You got to move on to the next thing anyway.
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I love
it was so lovely to go through all of that, whereas I know a while ago I would have been an absolute ready, steady, go kind of anxiety about it. I'd have expended so much energy before I even got to the task.
Right.
And I just didn't do it this time. I thought, well, it is what it is. I'll enjoy clambering over the vehicle. I'll enjoy climbing up the shelving unit. I'll enjoy scraping the entire bodywork across the garage entrance. I'll enjoy smashing it
into the wall. Well, and that's one of the, like there's always that, I got to do this thing. But then there's that enjoyableness to it as well. There's something that's like, I really do like that I'm doing. I like that I'm doing this.
I like the
I might complain about it.
Yeah. But luckily, Alan arrived. Alan, all hail Alan today.
Yes. And when does the plumber come tomorrow?
Tomorrow, yeah. Okay. So he won't mend the boiler because he'll have to get parts. He'll have to do the rest of his diagnostics and then figure out what he needs to make corrections.
So it's radiant heat.
Sorry?
It's radiant heat?
It's underfloor heating.
Okay.
So it's quite a big boiler.
Yeah. I do. That is nice heat.
Yeah, it's lovely. I was like, oh, wow, look at this. This is great.
Yeah.
Look at me for a whole 3 days. This is great.
That's right. Walking around and like, oh, man.
Barefoot.
That's so, yeah.
Because it's all got lovely wooden floorboards here as well, so that heat rises through the wood and warms
so
the
beautifully. Well, you know, maybe
it is what it is.
Yep, that is what it is. All right. Well, thanks for coming up and sharing that. And I love that last line. She knows that all of life is not without its problems.
Yeah.
And if it's not going to be, if we know that you're going to have to face some stuff in life, then facing stuff in life is just part of it.
That's exactly it. We're not creating it to be any bigger. We're not, because like it says, problems turn out to be no problem at all. And the reason that is because of the approach, the allowance of it. Yeah. So, I'm thanking, the ethers and the everything and the dust, the grains of sand and all of that for being part of me.
That's right. Absolutely. And there's nothing that you can do to make it not a part of you.
That's right. That's right.
And so just receive this. And then, that's what's great about like the idea of like doing everything with curiosity and a willingness to learn about this situation, this one specific situation that's coming up, crawling over the car and, let me make sure that I'm not, wearing anything that's going to scratch it. So let me make sure, I got to step on the tire and then get myself positioned. And, it's just like, you've never done this before. Like, how fun is it to maneuver your body in this way and not start with, I can't do that.
Exactly.
No is so easy.
Yeah.
No is such an easy answer to give.
It is.
But like, say less, say yes, I say.
I think that's a great saying, say less. Yes, that's fantastic. Thank you for having me on with you, Martin, John.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
It's always fun.
You have a wonderful day. I love being shared with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
Have a good one. Thank you guys so much for joining me. This is someone's here. Eva Camp. I always love talking to new folks, but maybe it's an error. Eva, are you with me? So you are. No. Sometimes people join and don't know what this is about. And so, Eva, thank you for listening. I appreciate you coming through. So this is Tao of the Day. I'm here 6 a.m. Central Time, and we talk about the Tao Te Ching. Tao Te Ching is an ancient text, and and that's my call. So I'm going to be signing out. Thank you all so much for joining me. This is Martin John. If you're interested in chatting with me outside of this, if you're interested in chatting with me and learning more about the Tao, learning more about my healing process in which I talk about, recovering yourself, getting out from under the influence, all of those things, you can learn more about that in my links in my profile. Other than that, you can also set up a free 30-minute call with me from my website. So thank you guys so much for joining me. And until next time, keep recovering yourself.